At this hour, I'm Christina Awayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
It's like saying, Jim Brown, you had all these scores that you did, but we're going to take away some of the touchdowns and give to somebody who didn't.
No,
that's not have it. That's exactly what you're, Maxine.
No,
I promise you, that's exactly what you're saying.
That is not. That is
Mr. Davidson, am I
not.
missing something? Ms. Waters, let me just tell you. One, I think you first addressed the fact that affordable housing, we hadn't addressed it, or it's somebody's fault. You know why housing is not affordable now? There are no battery-powered dump trucks. There are no battery-powered airplanes to fly people back and forth. Gasoline, fossil fuels are still the rule of the day in America. You're not going to get rid of oil and natural gas. The supply chain for getting materials to the job site, it's just not there. I can't get meters for housing. We've canceled more housing projects or developments because you can't get stuff. Time is money. And then you keep saying middle class, rich, middle class. I know a lot of people, if you look at their balance sheet, if you look at their net income, they choose to pay mortgage guarantee insurance because they have their equity tied up in other projects. So they choose to pay the mortgage guarantee insurance. It's risk-based. If you own a rental house and are wanting to sell it, you would want to self-finance, you would have a difference in rate for those who put down 20% or more versus those who put down 3%. It's just like Congressman Davidson said, it's risk-based, and it should be. If you self-financed, you would have to have a difference in the interest rate. Now, Maxine, you're not doubting that those with lower credit scores and lower down payments are paying less than those with higher scores and more down payments. You know, I mean, you're not disputing that, are you?
No, I'm only talking about those who are making less than a 20% down payment but had adequate credit scores. I'm not talking about anybody with lower credit scores. These are people who have the right amount of right credit scores, not people with less credit scores at all.
But
No.
So you're saying those with a higher credit score and more down payment are going to be paying the same, or going to be paying more than those with a less credit score and less down payment?
No, you take into consideration that there are fees that everybody pays. And when you are evaluated based on what your mortgage is and all other kinds of things, then you have a fee amount. But when you put on top of that the mortgage insurance, then those people who didn't have the 20% are paying more than those people who had 20% or more.
Why is that wrong?
Why is it wrong?
Yeah.
It is wrong because what you have is people who say that I've not been able, I can afford a mortgage every month, but I've not been able to save up 20%. And so I know I have to get mortgage insurance, and it's going to cost me some money to get it.
As it should.
And it's going to cost me so much money that when I add it to the other fees that you're charging me, I'm paying more for the interest rates than the person who had more money to pay down.
Yeah, but in the real world, I mean, I see them all the time. If you don't have 20% down payment, whether you've got your equity tied up somewhere else, you're going to pay a higher fee through the MGIC insurance. You just are, and you should. Anybody should. And forget middle class, rich, poor. It's people for the whole spectrum. What you're saying is it's just a redistribution is what this is. And I'll tell you,
it is not redistribution.
Jim Brown who recently died, and I'm going to get the book. It's like saying, Jim Brown, you had all these scores that you did, but we're going to take away some of the touchdowns and give to somebody who didn't.
No,
that's
not
That's
a good
exactly
outcome.
what you're, Maxine. I promise you, that's exactly what you're saying.
That is not. That is
Mr. Davidson, am I
absolutely not.
missing something?
And I think that to illustrate the point, you could say that the same person decides to buy two properties, right? And one of the properties, let's say they're both $100,000 homes. One of them is going to be, he's going to put $50,000 in cash down on it and get a separate mortgage. Well, you're going to pay a lower fee because you got 50% equity in the deal. The other one, he just puts the minimum down, 3%. And if you look at the table that we submitted in here as part of this, if you're only putting 3% down, you do have to buy mortgage insurance, right? Because you should. The risk of the default, even for somebody who's multimillionaire, on the property that's got $100,000 mortgage in it and only $3,000 down payment, you owe $97,000 on a $100,000 house, your risk of that mortgage is much higher than your risk on a $50,000 mortgage on another $100,000 property. The same borrower, same person, two different properties, they have different risk, and they should be priced differently. It has nothing to do with the income of the person, but the way that they created this table, it is also tied to your credit score. And that is the other part that's redistributive. It is bad policy. It wasn't well thought out. And our bill simply says, go back and think about it the right way. And we give GAO the mandate to go and do a study. And so then you have to do the rule notice. You know, they did this the wrong way. They implemented the policy, and then they got a bunch of pushback from the market, and they said, you know what, we should get feedback from the public. Well, no, why didn't you get feedback from the public up front and then implement the policy? Because we could have told you this was a bad idea. In the minute that we did, they dropped at least the worst idea, which was the debt-to-income portion. They continue to cling to this idea that it already took effect May 1st, and this bill just turns that off. And the idea of turning something off that shouldn't have been turned on in the first place creates some obligation for us to pick up the tab. It's not adding to the deficit. It's a bad score. And at a minimum, the CBO should have to show their work. So I hope it helps build one more piece in the evidence file while we eventually pass my CBO Show Your Work Act.
Well, I just say we deal with this all the time, and I can't tell you the number of high-income borrowers who've got terrible credit scores. They get, for whatever reason, they make a lot of money. They don't pay their bills on time. I will tell you that hourly mechanic who works with us, he got a perfect credit score. Now, he can't make, for a lot of for the inflation and the things that this administration is doing to this country at this time, no, he's stretched thin now. He pays his bills on time. Now, he couldn't afford that mechanic I'm talking about couldn't afford a 20% down payment. It's just things are tight now, but he goes into it with his eyes open. He pays a fee, just like that physician who overspends. If with a terrible credit score, he's going to have to pay a higher fee. There's no difference in credit card fees. 36% credit card fees are there because it's risk-based, and you don't have a mortgage. You don't sign a mortgage on a credit card. You walk away. And as Warren says, it's just no incentive. Those who put less down payment it's easy to walk away from. No fault. I mean, and you take that risk if you have the particular property.
Will the gentleman
yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
The problem is that LLPAs are double charging borrowers for risks they're already paying to cover, with the mortgage insurance. Don't forget the fees that you pay.
I get that.
Takes in consideration risk.
Give me an example.
Okay.
You walk me through an example of what you're talking about that's unfair. Show me two scenarios.
Well, there are a whole list of fees.
Let me see them.
Going to. Do we have a list of fees?
No, I'm not talking about, I know the fees.
Yeah.
I'm talking about give me two borrowers.
But
give me,
no. But this you have to take into consideration. When you are, here's some factors that determine the LLPA fee amount. Now, everybody has to pay these fees, right? And they take into consideration a lot of things. The purpose of the loan, such as to buy a condo or an investment property.
I get that.
Loan features, such as a fixed rate mortgage, borrower characteristics, everything. Amount of down payment, credit score, whether the borrower received housing counseling, first-time home buyer. All of this stuff is in the fees that are charged. And so when you don't have 20% down, you still are being judged in these fees because there's some risk that they have calculated and they have determined. So you're paying for the risk in the fees as they're calculated, and then on top of that, you have to have the mortgage insurance. And that means that you're paying more for your mortgage than the person who paid, 20% down. It's equity. It's equalizing.
It's redistribution.
Now, look,
Maxine, is redistribution's all you're talking about.
Just a moment. No, redistribution is a $180 billion bill that taxpayers are going to have to foot the cost of. Listen, even if you don't like the way it works, even if you don't think it should work that way, I don't believe that you shouldn't have to pay for it if that's what you're going to do. And it's not 180 billion that's determined. It's 300 plus billion that Mr. Davis. Do you believe that that's fair? I don't think you do.
Maxine,
you don't want to increase the debt.
Okay, on the debt part of it and on who, let's get the examples you gave me. Yes. You didn't really give me two examples of what's fair and what's unfair to walk me through a scenario. I get the MGIC insurance. I get the difference and I will tell you this, if you had a house, and I'm sure you own rental property, you would charge a different, if you were self-financing, you would charge a different fee, we'll call it mortgage guarantee insurance or whatever, for those.
Okay, go ahead.
For those who have a less credit score than those who have a higher credit score, to protect your interest that you have worked hard to afford. And all I'm saying is this is nothing but redistribution of penalizing those with a good credit score and subsidizing those who, for whatever reason, have a less credit score. It's just like the example I gave you. Jim Brown taking his record away and giving it to somebody because, for whatever reason, they couldn't do what he did.
Look, you're a lover of Jim Brown's, and you'll use Jim Brown as an excuse for everything.
Because you got his book.
We talk about this all the time. But I'm sorry, I said 180 billion, and they reminded me that it's 1.8 billion. But it's still 1.8 billion.
Kind of a lot of money.
With your amendments, how much is it?
I have no amendments. We have a manager's amendment, but the amendments that Democrats have proposed don't just deal with this, they deal with the whole idea of loan level price agreements. And I think your proposal is interesting to waive LLPAs for the amendment you've proposed to the bill for people who are first-time home buyers. Interesting. It would save them some money. It would come at expense of the safety and soundness of Fannie and Freddie, but it's not the same as hitting the budget deficit. It would be funded by Fannie and Freddie. It would increase risk. That's the amendment that you've proposed. There's no pay-for proposed in your amendment, but it would eliminate not just the new fees that are proposed by and implemented by Director Thompson. It would eliminate all LLPAs.
No.
This is your proposal.
Reclaiming my time.
No, that's not. Okay, reclaiming your time.
Maxine, I'd love to see, a breakdown. You tell me, use whatever number of price for the house. You give me two breakdowns, and you tell me what's so fair about both of them, and I'll be glad to have this debate offline. I don't want to take any more time, but this is none other than redistribution of wealth. And you're talking about a product. Housing, so goes the economy, so goes housing, because you've got over 200 different, you affect over 200 different areas that makes this a serious issue. And it's already hurting right now all across this country. I yield back.